With mad cow disease on the rise, ammonia-treated beef, and pink slime nuggets, do people have the right to know what they're eating and how their food is made? Well, if it's left up to big agribusiness and factory farms, the answer is no. And if you try to find out, you could be charged with a third-degree felony. They're called ag-gag laws, and they make it illegal to conduct undercover investigations into the treatment of livestock on factory farms. Iowa and Utah have already passed bills this year that ban the practice, and Missouri could be close behind. So these laws protect farmers and their businesses, like legislators claim, or is this just a desperate attempt by the food industry to cover up their unsafe and inhumane practices? I was joined earlier by Matt Rice, Director of Investigations, Mercy for Animals. I asked him why, if they have nothing to hide, are they hiding everything? Here's what he had to say.
That is a good question, Abby, and undercover investigations by Mercy for Animals and other groups across the country have exposed egregious cruelties, unsafe working conditions, unsanitary conditions at factory farms and slaughterhouses nationwide. And in response, rather than improve conditions for animals and make things safer for customers, pro-factory farm legislators in some states are working to criminalize these undercover investigations and prevent the public from finding out what's happening behind the closed doors of these facilities.
What exactly do these bills criminalize, and what are the penalties?
Well, there's a number of different states, and each bill is a little bit different, but most of them focus specifically on making it illegal to take photographs or videos of anything happening on a factory farm or a slaughterhouse or other facility that raises and kills animals for food. These are blatant violations of free speech and freedom of the press, and thinly veiled attempts to keep consumers in the dark about how and where their food comes from.
You mentioned before about previous undercover investigations that have actually led to some legislation being passed. And, you know, we saw there was an act passed that actually instated safer practices for hens and things like that. Can you talk about some of these investigations that have actually led to safer food practices and caused practices to change?
Well, one of the biggest beef recalls in United States history was prompted by an undercover investigation done by the Humane Society of the United States in California. And this was at a beef a beef slaughterhouse here in California. And what they found was just not only egregious cruelty to animals, but unsafe and unsanitary practices, and downed animals who were too sick or injured to stand, being pushed, prodded, forklifted, and waterboarded in order to get them onto the kill floor and into the human food supply. And they found that this beef was actually on its way to the National School Lunch Program. And the scariest part is that there were USDA inspectors at this facility, and yet these things were going on and they were not being stopped. And in many cases, USDA inspectors have said that even when they speak out, all that happens is they get reprimanded and sent to another facility. So really, there are no meaningful watchdogs at these facilities, and so it's vital that we're able to conduct these undercover investigations and expose these practices and get laws in place and protect not only the animals who are being treated cruelly, but also consumers who have a right to know where their food comes from.
Matt, that's a really good point. You know, a lot of consumers just expect that the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, is really taking care of this, and they really shouldn't care about it because, of course, you know, they're being done safely. Why would these regulatory bodies allow these practices to go on, package spoiled meat, abuse animals? But really, as you said, it does go on, and a lot of people are reprimanded for trying to expose that, which is a huge problem. Who is backing these bills, Matt?
Well, these bills are being backed by the giants in the factory farming industry, including Monsanto, one of the biggest ones. And if you look at the legislators, the pro-factory farm legislators that are trying to push these through, in almost every single case, these are people who have been receiving massive campaign contributions from the agribusiness industry. So it's a very thinly veiled attempt, again, to silence whistleblowers and keep the cruel and unsanitary and unsafe practices of the factory farming industry hidden behind closed doors.
Well, with companies like Monsanto and other huge agribusinesses backing and, you know, funneling thousands of money into campaign contributions for these legislators, how can the consumer really stop it?
Well, the exciting thing is that as people are becoming aware of these issues and these ag-gag bills across the country, consumers have been standing up and they've been contacting their legislators in many of these states. And in places like New York and Tennessee, these bills have actually been shot down once the public spoke and let their legislators know that this is not in their best interest. And if you can think about it, this is an industry that's proven time and time again to be incapable of self-regulation, and no other industry has these kinds of protection. If you could imagine these laws being passed to protect daycares so that people couldn't expose child abuse or sexual assault at a daycare or a senior home, that wouldn't fly. But the factory farming industry, unfortunately, has so much money and so much power, they're able to influence some corrupt politicians to push this type of legislation through, often under the nose of their constituents. But once constituents find out about it, they're outraged, and they want to know, they want more transparency in food production, not less, and they're speaking out against it.